Some women don't need to be hit to be hurt. All it takes is a voice quiet, constant, merciless. A voice that lives in their head but doesn't sound like theirs. It tells them who to be, how to act, what to feel, and what to hide. It sounds like reason, it sounds like caution, it sounds like love, but it isn't. It's the leftover voice of a father they could never please. A culture that punished their softness, and a lifetime of learning that being good means disappearing. This voice has many faces. Sometimes it's a policeman, sometimes it's a preacher, sometimes it's their own reflection. But its goal is always the same: control. This video is not about blaming men. It's about exposing the invisible system that turns women into prisoners inside their own skin. It's about the father complex that becomes a psychic warden, the negative animus that sabotages love, the unconscious belief that to be worthy you must be silent. And it's about how to break that curse. Because no healing is possible until you name the thing that's been speaking through you. If you've ever felt like you're too much, too emotional, too difficult, or not enough of anything, this is for you. We're going to dive deep, peel back the layers, and confront the real war behind your self-sabotage. And if this already speaks to something you've lived, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the truths no one else is saying. There are women who wake up every day already guilty. It's not because they've done anything wrong, but because there's a voice inside them that watches, judges, and commands. A voice that says, be good, be quiet, be perfect, be useful. And if they dare to rest, to laugh, or to feel desire, they're punished internally. That voice doesn't shout, it doesn't scream, it whispers with authority. It uses the exact tone their father once used. But now, it speaks from inside. Carl Jung called this phenomenon the negative animus, often born from a father complex. It's not just about a strict parent, it's about what gets built in his image: psychic policeman, a mental warden, spiritual judge. It doesn't matter if the father is alive, kind, or long gone. The voice stays, and it governs. In working class women, this voice often wears a uniform. It's the voice that says, don't complain, you have food on the table. Or you're not sad, you're just lazy. It uses the language of survival. It pretends to protect them from weakness, when in fact, it cuts off their humanity. They learn to suppress their tears so no one calls them dramatic. They stop expressing joy so no one thinks they're selfish. Even their femininity becomes a threat to their safety. So they cover it up, tame it, erase it. This is internalized oppression, and it has nothing to do with morality and everything to do with fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being abandoned, fear of being seen. And the voice, the inner policeman, feeds on that fear, tightening its grip the more they try to break free. This voice often appears in dreams as a tall, cold figure, a man in uniform, judge, a teacher, father, but it's never really him, it's what he became inside her. One woman dreamed of brushing an invisible orange katan, ancient symbol of feminine instinct, only to be interrupted by her dream father, declaring she was crazy. That's how the animus works. It interrupts the moments of self-connection and declares them invalid. It mocks intuition. It pathologizes pleasure. It calls softness a weakness and independence a danger. Even when she tries to nurture herself, to reconnect with the sacred feminine, he appears to police her, to correct her, to shame her. This happens not in public, but in the private courtroom of her own mind. This isn't just psychological theory, it's a daily war. Imagine a single mother working 2 jobs, trying to stay sane while raising a child. She's overwhelmed, exhausted, and desperate to rest. But when she finally lies down, the voice kicks in. Get up, clean something, be better, you're failing. So she obeys. Not because anyone told her to, but because she absorbed that voice so deeply it became her own. This is the toxic inner critic, but dressed in patriarchal uniform. It doesn't care about her well-being, it only cares about performance. About being enough in the eyes of others. And that performance becomes a trap, a beautiful prison, polished with duty, morality, and sacrifice. But inside, she's disappearing. And here's the cruel twist. The more she obeys the voice, the more invisible she becomes to herself. She's praised for being strong, but that strength is silent suffering. She's admired for being selfless, but that selflessness is spiritual depletion. She can no longer feel pleasure without guilt. She can't say no without shame. Even when she tries to make simple choices, what to wear, what to eat, who to love, the voice intervenes. Not that. It's too much. You'll regret it. So she hesitates. She doubts. She slowly forgets what it means to want something for herself, and in doing so, she starts to vanish from her own life. That is the legacy of the negative animus. A life lived in fear of your own authenticity. Women with this complex often confuse control with love. If he wasn't violent, if he paid the bills, if he said I love you once, then surely he was a good father, right? But emotional tyranny doesn't always look like abuse. Sometimes it looks like protection, like silence. It's like never being allowed to cry. So she inherits not only the man, but the system he represented. The man who told her what was acceptable, what was safe, what was respectable. She carries it forward like law enforcing it on herself, her relationships, even her own children. She becomes the enforcer and the imprisoned. And if she ever rebels, the inner punishment is swift. Guilt, shame, anxiety, dread, that's not growth, that's mental captivity. The saddest part, most women don't even know they're under psychic occupation. I think it's just who they are. That voice that hates their body, just honesty, that thought that says they're a bad mother, just reality. That refusal to rest, cry, or enjoy, just discipline. But none of it is theirs. It was planted, fed, watered by the culture, the family, the trauma. And it grew into a vine that now strangles everything tender inside them. But once they see it, once they name it, they can begin to disobey it. To reject its authority, to find their real voice beneath the noise. And in that act of rebellion, something ancient returns. The right to feel, the right to be. The right to live as if they were not broken. So if you've ever felt like someone's watching you from inside your own head, you're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not ungrateful. You're under the gaze of an inherited system that was never yours to begin with, and you can break it. But first, you have to see it for what it is. Not your truth, but your training. And you must ask, what would your life look like without that voice? That's the door we're about to open, because the tragedy doesn't end with internalized control. It evolves, deepens. And in the next chapter, we'll see how that same inner force rises again this time. Not to protect you, but to sabotage the very love you've always longed for. Before we go there, check the first pinned comment for a selection of hand-picked tools to help you reclaim your inner freedom. And tell us in the comments. Have you ever felt like you're your own jailer? There's a moment just before love begins where everything feels possible. You laugh a little freer. You speak without overthinking. You don't yet fear the collapse. For some women, that moment never arrives. Or when it does, it's ruined before it can grow roots. Something inside snaps. The tension rises. A harmless word turns into an argument. A calm evening erupts into distance, and she walks away. Not because she doesn't want love, but because something in her refuses to let it stay. This is not a flaw in her personality. It's not a sign she's too intense. It's the negative animus at work sabotaging connection before it can soften her. Because if love reaches her, control is lost. And the inner jailer cannot allow that. This internal sabotage isn't loud, surgical, precise. It makes her send the wrong text at the worst time, pushes her to test people, hurt first, or disappear emotionally. She may cry afterward, blaming herself for blaming them. But deep down, a pattern emerges. Every time she gets close to someone who sees her, the unconscious trauma rises. Carl Jung warned that what we don't make conscious becomes our fate. And this is fate disguised as choice. She's not rejecting love. She's reenacting pain. Pain that says, I don't deserve this. Or he'll leave me anyway. Or worse, if I love, I'll lose myself. These aren't conscious thoughts. They're psychic reflexes, triggered by vulnerability and behind them. That same animus voice masked as wisdom, whispering, don't trust this, you'll regret it. Some women only feel safe in coldness. When someone is distant, they can breathe. When someone is kind, they panic. They wait for the catch. They anticipate betrayal. If it doesn't come, they create it. It's not because they're broken, but because warmth feels dangerous. Love was never a sanctuary, it was a setup. So when they finally meet someone real, someone open, they ruin it. Not by choice, but by conditioning. They test the man. accuse him, they withdraw. And afterward they say, "Why do I always do this?" The answer isn't simple. It lives in the shadow. It lives in the voices they absorbed. Voices that said, "Don't trust men," or "Emotions make you weak," or "Good women don't need anyone." These beliefs, buried but alive, become landmines in intimacy. One woman once dreamed of offering strawberries to her therapist. It was a pure impulse, warm, simple, human. But just before the gesture, a thought interrupted. He'll laugh at me. He'll twist it. It'll be embarrassing. She didn't buy the strawberries. Instead, she walked into the session and attacked him for an hour. That's the animus. It turns affection into shame, vulnerability into danger, softness into foolishness. And this is why so many women, especially those raised in environments of control, cannot sustain love. Not because they're incapable, but because shadow work was never done. Because the animus still thinks for them. It tells them how to read a man's words. It decides when to push him away, and she believes it's her, that it's just instinct. But it's not. It's inherited fear. And here's the dark truth. The more potential there is in the relationship, the more violently the animus reacts. The closer she gets to genuine love, the more resistance she feels. She may even lash out at the person she loves most. Why? Because that part of her has never known love without danger. Love was used to manipulate, to control, to abandon. Now, even tenderness feels like a setup. And the animus jumps in to protect her by destroying what could save her. It speaks through her actions, not just her thoughts. It triggers arguments, cold silences, reckless distance, and afterward, she's left with shame. With the feeling that she can never love right, that something in her is permanently damaged. But what if the damage isn't real? What if it's programmed? The animus doesn't just distort her perception of others, it warps her perception of herself. She starts to believe that she's the problem, that she's too much, that she's not lovable. And this belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. She settles for less. She avoids closeness. She accepts emotional crumbs and calls it love, because anything more would awaken the panic, the intimacy, the rawness she was trained to fear. And so she lives in emotional exile, craving connection, but sabotaging it whenever it gets close. And no one sees it. To the world, she looks independent, strong, untouchable. But inside, she's starving. She doesn't know how to eat without choking on guilt. This isn't about fixing her. It's about understanding what's really breaking her from within. But the animus isn't a monster. It's a wounded guard dog, learned to protect her by attacking. It thinks love is a threat, because once, maybe long ago, it was. And now, that outdated protection keeps ruining her present. The solution isn't to kill the animus. It's to reclaim authority. To say, "I hear you, but I choose something else." That choice takes time and repetition and failure, but it's possible. And with every act of tenderness, especially when it's hard, she weakens the old voice. She makes space for a new one. A voice that says, "You're allowed to love and be loved without fear." But to get there, she must first witness the patterns clearly, because what you don't name will keep acting in silence. And so we reach a turning point. It's not enough to understand where the pain comes from. You must now confront what it's doing to your life right now. Because love is not a fantasy. It's a battlefield between the part of you that wants to connect and the part of you trained to destroy connection. And if that war isn't healed, the same cycle will repeat again and again, until there's nothing left to sabotage. But healing is possible. It begins with seeing the voice for what it is, and choosing not to obey it. In the next chapter, we'll go even deeper. You'll see how this same animus doesn't just sabotage love. It silences your motherhood, your leadership, your fire, and it does it all in the name of goodness. To support your healing, check the first pinned comment for tools and books that might change the way you see yourself. And tell us below, have you ever pushed love away and didn't know why? There's a kind of violence that never leaves a bruise. It doesn't scream, it doesn't hit, it whispers, "Be a good mother, be a good wife, be a good woman," and so she complies. She smiles when she's broken. She comforts others while she's collapsing. She says yes, when her entire body is begging to scream no. And slowly, the betrayal begins not from others, but from herself. What started as care becomes performance. What began as love becomes duty. And the more she tries to be good, the more she feels dead inside. That's not discipline. That's self-abandonment disguised as virtue. And the voice that demands it, still the animus. Still the inner policeman. But now, wearing the face of morality, in motherhood, this betrayal sharpens. Society tells her to be endlessly patient, nurturing, emotionally available. But what if she's tired? What if she's angry? What if her child spills soup after the 10th warning? Her instinct might be to shout, to explode for a second, and then return to love. But the animus intervenes. That's bad parenting. You'll scar them. So, she swallows her rage, smiles through the teeth, suppresses every impulse. And that bottled fury, it festers, it leaks. It turns into resentment, depression, numbness. This is maternal repression, when the standard of good erases the full spectrum of humanity. And it's not love. It's fear dressed as virtue. Fear of judgment, of failing, of being exposed as imperfect. Carl Jung warned that what we repress does not vanish, it grows in the dark. And so, when women repress their authentic reactions to meet an ideal, they're not healing, they're fragmenting. One woman dreamed of vomiting in front of her dream father. A brutal image, but also revealing. Vomiting symbolically is the expulsion of what should never have been swallowed. Fake forgiveness, fake politeness, fake calm. The dream said it plainly. She had been stomaching too much for too long. And that's what many women live daily, swallowing words, anger, tears, needs, until the soul begins to rot. Because anything that can't be felt can't be healed. And anything that can't be healed turns inward like a knife. The animus becomes most dangerous when it speaks the language of ethics. You're not allowed to be angry. You must never disappoint anyone. You must always give more than you receive. And because it sounds moral, it becomes unquestioned. But what is morality without truth? What is virtue without vitality? If your idea of being good means you're exhausted, bitter, anxious, and invisible, who is it really serving? Not you. Not your children, not your partner, just a ghost of an ideal. And yet many women cling to that ideal, terrified that if they drop the act, they'll lose love. But the opposite is true. You don't lose love when you're real. You lose the illusion of control, and that loss is liberation. Women raised to be caretakers often believe their value lies in disappearing. The less space they take, the more they are loved. The less they complain, the more they are praised. The more they sacrifice, the more they are seen as good. But that's not love. That's consumption. And over time, this becomes a kind of psychological self-rape where the soul is violated not by others, but by the constant silencing of what's real inside. You feel it in your body, the lump in your throat, the tightness in your chest, the fatigue in your bones. This is not aging, it's accumulation. It's the weight of every yes you meant to say no to, of every mask you wore when your face wanted to scream. But there's a hidden cost to this betrayal. Eventually it becomes rage. It's not just toward others, but toward life itself. The mother who resents her child, but can't admit it. The woman who lashes out at her partner for needs she never voiced. The caregiver who explodes over something small because she's never been cared for herself. And everyone calls her dramatic, emotional, irrational, but they don't see the decades of suppression beneath the surface. This is why shadow work for women is not luxury, it's survival. Because until she feels safe enough to tell the truth to herself and others, she will keep performing roles she never chose. And that performance is killing her, it's a saying. A woman who heals herself heals her entire lineage. But healing doesn't start with love. It starts with rebellion, with disobedience, the courage to say, no more silence, no more perfection, no more self-erasure in the name of being enough. That's the moment she shifts from victim to sovereign, from prisoner to priestess, from caretaker to creator. And that shift is not loud. It's not always visible. Sometimes it looks like finally resting without guilt, finally saying no without apology, Finally wanting something just for herself and not explaining why? That's not selfish. That's sacred. And every woman deserves to feel it in her body. The sensation of not being controlled anymore. So this isn't just about psychology. It's about your right to exist without auditioning for love. Your right to rest without asking permission. Your right to be fully human even when it's messy, loud, or inconvenient. And if the voice in your head still says otherwise, it's time to ask, whose voice is that? And why are you still obeying it? Because the world needs women who aren't just nice. It needs women who are real, who feel, who lead, who no longer betray themselves in the name of approval. If you're ready to unlearn this inherited obedience, check the first pinned comment for transformative resources that can help you start. And tell us in the comments, what part of you are you ready to stop betraying today? You weren't born to perform goodness. You were born to embody truth. And sometimes, truth isn't graceful. Sometimes it cries too loud. Sometimes it shakes with rage. Sometimes it wants rest, solitude, boundaries, distance. And none of that makes you broken. What breaks you is the performance, the silence, the obedience to a voice that was never yours. You don't have to keep living under laws you didn't write. You don't have to keep loving like you owe someone something. And you don't have to keep shrinking to fit a mold that was built to keep you small. The real you, the one beneath the roles, the guilt, the noise is not too much. She is what the world has been starving for. A woman who doesn't apologize for existing. But knowing that isn't enough, you have to act on it, because the voice won't leave quietly. It will test you every time you say no. It will whisper every time you choose joy. And the only way to silence it is to live louder than it. So start today. Claim your space. Speak your truth. Love without permission. Most of all, stop betraying yourself in the name of being good. Now I want to hear from you. What belief about yourself are you finally ready to let go of? Leave it in the comments. Let's unlearn together. And if this video cracked something open in you, subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us for the next step. And don't forget to check the first pinned comment. There's something waiting there that might change everything.